Mridhula, you're in Abu Dhabi where there's a lot of activity going on overhead. So could you just tell us very quickly what it's like living in that, well, in the current time with and what's going on, and how that relates to food security in your case?
The situation is, of course, I want to say normal-ish, right? It's not obviously normal. I've never been in a war zone before, but Abu Dhabi is not in active war zone right now. But there are, you've seen the news, there are issues with drones and missiles coming in. But one thing, just related to food security, is one thing that has been calming, right? In the sense that has helped maintain the calm in the city is that the supply chains are holding, so far at least, right? So there is no shortage of food, there is no shortage of water or essentials. So we are able to access food at any point in time. I went to a local grocery store yesterday. I picked up some stuff. So it's everything's on the shelves available. The supply chain is holding. There's no issue right now, and the government has also been quite good in asking people to maintain calm and in reassuring people that the supply chain will hold, that they have enough stockpiling of essentials, so nobody's going to run out of food in the short term or in the medium term.
We believe that every country in the world needs to have a food security zone, even every city. Right. So every province, every city needs to have food security zone. So in times of need, like COVID or even a war, your food doesn't have to travel 2,000 miles, to your city, right? Because of the borders locking up and then things like that. The next conversation for food security will be in Asia because number one, let's look at climate change, global warming, Europe and US, right? The winters are getting colder, summers are getting hotter, and because of the four seasons in these areas and continents, they can only grow crops one cycle per year. Right, but let's look at Southeast Asia. We are tropical. We are tropical all year round, which means that for most crops, we can produce up to 3 cycles per year compared to them who is 1 cycle per year, and means we save a lot more on energy, on land costs, on labor costs. And why do I say that the conversation of food security will come to Asia? Because Asia hosts 60% of the world's population, right? So where else would the conversation be?
If we were to just give the raw material to anyone today for microalgae, people may not know how to use it yet, whether it's a powder or the paste form. So that will not be quite easy to understand and to use. But we productize it to the end. So for example, a noodle will be what we are able to roll out with a customer like Prima. So now you'll be able to look at noodles that is high protein and fiber, not just carbohydrates. So this is one example of a strategic partnership between Life3 and our B2B customers to then create a joint solution.
If you take the Ukraine war, because Ukraine is one of the largest suppliers of wheat in the world, and it had a lot of consequences, particularly in many parts of Asia and Africa. What we, of course, see is that what we immediately assume is that, the prices have gone up. People cannot afford to buy that. Impact of that is essentially because of the Ukraine war, it is estimated that almost 12 to 17 million more people have gone into malnutrition. So that's the additional malnutrition that is being caused by global supply chain disruptions. And then if you added another layer of gender, overall, this is not just from Ukraine perspective, overall there are 64 million more women who are malnourished than men. Then what is the consequence of that? With women being more malnourished, if they end up having children, they tend to be malnourished, and the cycle continues to repeat because malnutrition is something that can be cured. It is not a permanent disease, right? But once you're not addressing the malnutrition during pregnancy or during the first 3 years of the baby's life, the child then grows up to be undernourished throughout. And then that has a lot of negative consequences, both to the child's life and overall to the society.
To all the listeners out there, I would like to say business opportunity is now. It's not 10 years ago when farmers are not ready to retire. It's not to wait till 10 years later when farmers have already retired. The opportunity is now. And why now? Especially now with AI, with IoT, I can give you a very good example of what's happening in my farm. These days when I go to my farm, all I see is my guys playing guitar, playing cards or mahjong, And I was shocked at first. When I went there, I said, hey, don't you guys need to work? And then their reply shocked me. They say, sir, what's there to do? Everything is recorded using the IoT system, the AI system. We can read the water parameters, the temperature, the DO, whatever's happening in the water. All we need to do, even feeding is automated, right? All we need to do is to provide them a good environment, wait 4 months for them to grow up, and then we harvest. So with technologies these days, I want to destigmatize farming is hard work, backbreaking under the hot sun. And I want to encourage more of the younger generation to come into farming. Basically, with technologies these days, all you need to do is with a press of a button and we can get things done. We should focus on our strength and less on our weakness, do what we are good at. So for Singapore, our clear weakness is that we don't have much land, right? Most things are expensive. Rental is expensive, labor is expensive, energy is expensive. So why force it? Why force our companies to grow in Singapore, where a strategy like what Ricky mentioned could be to grow overseas and then bring back to Singapore? Just let me give you an analogy. Let me clear this first, right? The technologies, agri-tech, aqua-tech, the technologies in many companies in Singapore, they work well, they work perfectly, right? But sometimes it's energy cost, right? So to produce a ball of lettuce in Singapore, it costs 3 times of what it would take to cost to produce in Malaysia, shipped to Singapore. So from Malaysia, if I were to ship a ball of lettuce to Singapore to our doorstep, it's 50 cents. But to produce a ball of lettuce in Singapore, it's 150 and higher.
Today, I think it's quite a known fact. It's no longer just about stockpiling, right? It is also where are we able to localize part of the supply chain production, as well as growing overseas, right? So not just buying from overseas, but growing it from our local firms in an overseas market and bring it back in.
The cool thing about Crawfish is that it just dig a hole in the backyard. You have a bathtub or you have a pond, throw the crawfish in. 4 months later, you have a market size, product to sell. So that's why we advocate Crawfish, and we believe that Crawfish can help alleviate world food poverty. In fact, a fact is that when we add Crawfish into the paddy fields, we increase the farmers' income by 400%. And today, more than 10,000 farmers in the world have increased their income by 400%. A lot of people would say, Desmond, where would I get the money, right, to buy all these tech equipment? Or the barriers of entries to farming, some might say, are pretty high because of the land usage, the rental, etc. This is where Hatch Hives come into play. What we do is that we work with governments all over Asia. We get land at a fraction of a price because of collaboration with governments with the purpose of food security. So at Hatch Hives, we also have a board of companies and directors and experts who have track records of how to farm chicken, how to farm fish, how to grow rice, etc., 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 where they can teach you successful SOPs and techniques and provide you with technologies on how to grow things. What we do is that we fractionalize the land. So instead of having to pay huge amount of money to own 1 hectare or 10 hectares of land, you can now, it's like co-working space concept, but for farming, right? So instead of having to rent a big office, you can now rent a table. So put that into farming. Instead of having to spend a lot of money on 10 or 100 hectares of land, now you can rent 1 hectare of land, half a hectare of land with experts holding your hand, guiding you and teaching you to farm side by side. So this is how we solve the problem and what we want to do to encourage the next generation to come into farming.